Good morning, everybody. Sunday morning, another beautiful day here when it comes for weather-wise, for sports, for fantasy, for betting. It's just a wonderful day in the neighborhood, not the gimmick. An old friend of mine named Mr. Rodgers from the PBS network. That shows just how old I really am. But again, Tony Jigsaw Cutillo, give me a follow at TCutillo23, Fantasy Firebox at Win Daily Sports. Follow on all social formats, and especially sign up for our package. It's free Discord chat. Check it out. See what you like. Talk to all the experts, man. Having a good day always here on the Fantasy Firebox. Yesterday, pretty good day when it comes to baseball. Yesterday, we hit on some really good value plays. Told everybody, check the Detroit Tigers out, right? And what happened? They really came with the bats. Tremendous value yesterday. Luis Castillo, 7,500. We got him again, 33 plus for Luis Castillo at 7,500. We hit on that as well. Teoscar Hernandez. Teoscar Hernandez. We said that was the guy to take from the Blue Jays, not Vlad. I didn't want to pay up 6,300 for Vlad. Give me Hernandez at 4,700. What does he do? Boom, 25 plus. So you got to listen to the Firebox. You got to check it out. We don't hit everything, but we give you some tremendous values here on this show. And today is football day. Simple as that. We need to get ready for these drafts. Unfortunately, I can't be on Sirius this weekend. I really want to be on Sirius this weekend with Jason and the crew. Do a tremendous job on the Fantasy Sports Network, but just couldn't do it. Got some commitments, things here or there. So we're right here. We're talking fantasy right here on a Sunday morning. And what better way to kick off than our preseason outlooks that we've been doing every single week. Last week was the Arizona Cardinals. The week before, it was the Baltimore Ravens. We did the Tennessee Titans. Now, today, we're going to look at the Cleveland Browns. And I'll tell you what, Cleveland Browns lay a close place to my heart here for Tony Jigsaw Cutillo. And I'll tell you why, because I'm a Baker Mayfield guy. Strictly on a football level, I'm a Baker guy. I love what Baker does. I was so happy to see him selected where he wasn't number one. I know everybody says it should have been Saquon, whatever. All I know is when you're Cleveland and you need a leader and the best quarterback you have over the years has been Vinny Testaverde, you need to do the best you can to get my man Baker into the mix, right? So that's for damn sure. I love Baker Mayfield, but let's just break it down from a strictly a fantasy football level, because there's a lot of layers to this team. Okay, when we talk about the Cleveland Browns. And it's because, number one, because of injury. Number two, because of they're a run-first offense, right? We all know that. But Baker Mayfield had a really good year last year. Now, from fantasy numbers, let's not say that he wasn't elite. Okay, obviously, he wasn't your lockdown quarterback number one. But if you took him on specific weeks in your DFS lineup, he hit you some money. Okay, in your season-long drafts, if you take him as your number one overall quarterback, like your QB1, you probably had some inconsistencies there, right? But if you had him as your QB number two, because a lot of people, I'll tell you right now, I had drafted Ryan Tannehill, okay, and I had Baker Mayfield. So I was able to ride Tannehill, and in certain matchups, I would start Baker, and it really, really worked out. So the thing is, he cut his interceptions down by 60%. That's huge, okay? That's huge. We always talk about the third-year pro thing, right? It takes a few years for a lot of guys, and the third year is kind of when they excel, and I think that's what happened, and it doesn't hurt that you have a guy named Kevin Stefanski. It's not expecting you to throw the ball 40 times, okay? He's a run-first guy, which brings in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I really like Baker Mayfield. Now, does that mean he's a QB1? Listen, I don't think he is, obviously. We're talking about last year, he was just under that 20-point plateau at 19 points per game. Okay, depending on what your scoring system is. When we talk about yards, is it 4 every 100? Is it 5 every 100? Is it 4 for a TD? Is it 6 for a TD? But, he's right at that line, right? For me, quarterbacks need to give me 20 plus. That's what I need. So he was right there because he was inconsistent. So will he be able to do that this year? I'm not sure, but this is a team that's primed for a Super Bowl run. Say what you want, right? Say what you want, but this is what you have to look at. You have to look at the attempts. And this is, again, I love Fantasy Football Today, fftoday.com, great site. Again, Win Daily is where we go, but you always look at other sites. So when I pay homage to these sites, if I take some stats from them, okay, because they do some really good work. Okay, so right now I'm looking at, a stat specifically from fftoday.com where Baker Mayfield was no better than 17th in NFL attempts, completions, and yardage, and 13th in touchdown passes, right? Median of road. It doesn't because he's not elite. It's because he's coming from a system that's a run-first kind of offense, right? So we've seen that. We saw that last year. We saw that with Nick Chubb. We saw that with Kareem Hunt. This is Kevin Stefanski's blueprint written all over, okay? It's Kevin Stefanski's blueprint written all over it. So for me, Baker Mayfield, where does he fall? Obviously, he's probably right outside the top 15. Maybe, maybe 14, depending on. But I don't see them changing their makeup of this team. Okay, they're going to use play action a lot, obviously, because they're a run-first team. But the main part of their offense is going to be coming from the running back position, right? So Baker Mayfield, it will be a really good streaming option in DFS. I will not draft him as my overall QB1. I just don't think he's going to give me that many attempts. I think he'll be good on probably 40% of the games this year, but you really have to pick out what games they are going to be, in my opinion, to give him your QB1. I just think this year there's a ton of quarterback value, and I don't think you need to reach. And I think that, looking at Baker Mayfield from an NFL standpoint, you might look at that team and say, okay, they're primed to go, primed to win, but we're talking about fantasy here. We want to make some money. We want to win our league. We want to win our weekly matchup. So he's not going to always be that guy that you can lean on, even though I am a Baker guy when it comes to NFL standards. Now, looking at the running back position, here's where it gets very interesting, because I know for a fact a lot of people love them some Nick Chubb. Okay, I know a lot of people. I'm looking at Nick Chubb being drafted in the top 5 in some rounds. Okay, and we're going to get to the running back situation a little bit overall, but just looking at this from a standpoint of Nick Chubb, will he get enough touches to be elite? Okay, will he? Now, his average yards per carry, which is something I look at all the time. I look at the average yards per carry. Give me the YPC all day long, because that's going to tell me if this guy's going to be consistent enough. Okay, and last year, 5.6. It was huge. The year before, 5.0. Okay, the year before that, 5.2, which means he can hit the hole and he gets a lot of yards. I think he's number 1 in the NFL for yards after contact. Actually, number 2. Derrick Henry probably number 1. I think Nick Chubb is number 2, yards after contact. Now, the one thing that's very concerning, I think, that you have to look at Nick Chubb is from a receiving standpoint. Okay, and this has Kareem Hunt written all over it. Last year, only 18 targets in 12 games, 16 catches. The year before, 49 targets in 16 games and 36 catches. Huge drop-off. Now, we don't expect Nick Chubb to be the wide receiver, but we're talking PPR, and you're talking about bell cow back. I think you need to be very careful with Nick Chubb. I like him a lot. He's explosive, right? He's very, very explosive. The problem is, does he give you enough, right? Does he give you enough? 17 and a half points per game last year. Okay. If you look at his consistency from a point per game perspective, he was pretty good, right? If you're looking from week 12 to week 17, consistently double digits, averaging about 16 and a half per game, right where his normal average is. Only 2 games last year in single digits. But here's what I worry about. I worry about he needs the big run or the touchdown to be successful. Okay. So if you're looking at that week 12 to week 17, that 5 to 6 game span, and he scored every single game. One game in week 14, he scored twice. Okay. So he needed those numbers, and his rushing attempts, listen, only 1 game over 19, right? 19, 18, 17, 15, 11, and 14. I'm just saying, I need to be very careful when I look at Nick Chubb. Okay, I cannot classify him as absolutely elite top 5 running back situation because of the way he gets his touches. Now, I'm not a touchdown guy. I've told you guys that before. Touchdowns to me are a luxury. Okay, so I cannot base my projections off of touchdowns. So if you look at that span from week 12 to week 17, and you take 6 points away every single one of those averages, he is nothing but an average running back. That's the problem. Okay. In week 17, only one target. Week 13, one target. 14 and 15, two targets. He's not getting the ball. He is a one-dimensional running back because of Kareem Hunt. Now, when Kareem Hunt wasn't there, you notice that's why we look at the year before when he had 36 catches. They used him a little more in the passing game, but they are going to put Kareem Hunt out there a lot. And that is my biggest issue. I like Kareem Hunt, too, as an RB2. Now, obviously not as an RB1, but an RB2 because he's going to get enough looks, in my opinion, to be very serviceable. How many looks is he going to get? Not sure, but if you look at the history last year, okay, he still got 198 rushing attempts, almost got 200. Okay, that we could be looking at a Mark Andrews, Alvin Kamara situation of about 3 to 4 years ago, where both these guys make a Pro Bowl, and both these guys are pretty electric. It's just going to be who is the guy that you want to own. Obviously, your number one guy is going to be Nick Chubb, but you're talking about Kareem Hunt giving you 14 a game, okay, per week because he has 51 targets last year, right? You look at he did, within those same period, okay. If we look at the 12 to 17 period. It's not just passing numbers for Kareem Hunt. He's getting double-digit rushing attempts. So how can I draft Nick Chubb at number 5 at 17 attempts where I know his counterpart, Kareem Hunt's getting 14? That's almost a complete split. So I'm sorry, I cannot go all in on Nick Chubb this year where he's being drafted. Now, if you're talking about after that top 5 and, when other guys are gone, and we're going to get to those guys in a little bit, then I start to lean towards that way. But I can't take him as one of the elite because he's still a guy who shares the ball consistently. I mean, listen, you have to look inside these numbers, right? You break down even from a week 1 standpoint. Week 1 to 13, Kareem Hunt has had 10+ carries easily. And out of those games, you're talking 8 of them where he was above 14, 18, 17, 20, 19. These aren't games where Nick Chubb was injured. These are games where Nick Chubb played. Be very careful. That's all I'm going to say. Be very careful when we're talking about Nick Chubb as your elite running back. Okay, now let's get to the receiving position. This is where it gets interesting again, because do you trust OBJ to be your guy, right? I mean, listen, this is a guy who absolutely dominated. We talked about whether it be the culture, whether it be the play on the field, he was going to change the NFL. And ever since the injuries happened, all the the monotony that went on in with the New York Giants, so many things have just stumped this guy's rise back to elite level. And I just don't think it's there. I don't think I can rely on him. Number one, this isn't an offense that's going to throw to him 10 times a game. It's not going to happen, right? He's coming back from an ACL injury, which is even hard at best, even though guys come back from it all the time. Again, this is, a Kevin Stefanski run offense. It's a run-first kind of game, okay? So to think that Odell Beckham Jr. is going to turn back the clock, so to speak, and get 120, 130, 140 targets. I don't think it's going to happen, right? I don't. I think he is more of a wide receiver 2 right now. Okay, especially with the insertion of Jarvis Landry, who is a huge possession guy. Okay, Rashard Higgins, who showed that he can really play. Even Donovan Peoples-Jones, who showed that he could play. And then, by the way, you paid Austin Hooper all that money. The offense is going to go where, yes, OBJ will have his games where he is the number one guy on that team. But it's probably only going to be 3 or 4, and you're going to be hurting if you take him as your wide receiver 1. Okay? So from 2018 was the last time that he averaged anywhere above 15 points per game as a wide receiver. And that was the first year. That was the year before he was traded to the Cleveland Browns. That was when he was a New York Giant, right? So his first year with the Cleveland Browns, 12.7 last year, obviously gets hurt. Again, 74 for 1,035 is where he was in 2019 in 16 games. I don't think he ever gets to that number again. I think he's more of a 65 to 70 catch receiver, just barely breaking that 1,000-yard plateau. And I think he'll probably get like 6 or 7 touchdowns because I think he will be looked at in the red zone specifically. But I just don't see him being that wide receiver 1 for your fantasy team. So I don't think you can expect that. I don't think you can expect that. Jarvis Landry is a guy I think that you can look at as a possession guy, as a PPR guy, kind of like that Cole Beasley kind of role. That's going to get you those double-digit targets because I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to pay attention to Odell Beckham Jr., and it's going to open up the inside for guys like Jarvis Landry across the middle to that skinny post, to the little flat route, to the wheel route to the side, right, to the fade to the sideline. Austin Hooper is going to benefit. And the long guy is going to be Rashard Higgins. Don't discount Rashard Higgins. We've seen Rashard Higgins play some really good games last year. He was a really good DFS guy as well. And you have to look at the way the Buffalo Bills are basically equipped when they have a guy like Stephon Diggs, and they have obviously Emmanuel Sanders now, but they had a guy last year in Gabriel Davis who kind of played that Rashard Higgins role. Right, you see that a lot. Right, you see that a lot. A guy like Anthony Miller who just got traded to the Houston Texans. From the Chicago Bears. Right, this guy can be very serviceable, especially in this Cleveland offense. It's not going to have a number 1 go-to guy, in my opinion. So guys like Rashard Higgins, for me, when we're looking at the outlook for the Cleveland Browns, are a guy more that I would be in tune to look at so I don't have to reach. Okay, because that's the biggest thing. I don't want to reach, right? And this year, I think with the extra game, the dual bye weeks, there's so many things to think about. And if you just look at, Rashard Higgins, finally, and we talked about him last year, right? But after OBJ goes down in week 7, it took a little while for Jarvis Landry to assert himself. But if you look at weeks 13, 14, and 15, respectively, it's a 3-game sample size. You're talking about a guy who's got 24 targets. And out of those 24 targets, that's 16 catches, and it's giving you about 14 to 15 average per catch. Okay, that's some really good numbers for Rashard Higgins. So I think he's a very, very silent sleeper. Okay, going deep in fantasy drafts that I think that you need to look at. Okay, I'll tell you what, it's crazy, but I would much rather draft, when we're talking about the Cleveland Browns respectively, I'd much rather draft a guy like Rashard Higgins in the 12th, 13th, 14th round than a guy like OBJ that I'm going to have to stretch on in the 3rd, okay, for numbers that I'm probably not going to get. Okay, so that's my deal with Rashard Higgins, okay, and OBJ. So I think, and from a tight end standpoint, if you're expecting a guy like an Austin Hooper to go off and get you, it's not going to happen. Okay, he's just going to be a hit or miss kind of guy. Okay, it is a very tight end friendly system, but the problem is they have more than just one guy. Okay, they still have David Njoku, who I really like. I think he's more athletic, obviously, and he will rise more and more this year than he did last year as he gets more of the playbook down and learns how to run crisp routes and learns how to get open and learns how to block better on the field, because this is a running style offense. The reason why they brought Austin Hooper in, because he came from that Atlanta system that, again, yes, he was a nice playmaker, but he was a good blocker as well. So they have two good blockers here for Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So I think that'll continue. So Austin Hooper, just a DFS guy, pick the right matchup. I'll probably be that guy. But if you're going to get him to be a guy that you think is going to be, one of your guys that you consistently start as a tight end 1 in your season long, you're going to be sadly mistaken and you're going to be very disappointed. Okay. Now, that's the Cleveland Browns to me. A lot of interesting turns when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, but you see, do I think they're a drop dead fantasy stud elite team? No, but I think there's some very good value in the team. And again, I'm going to say it, be very, very careful with Nick Chubb. Be very, very careful. Now, I want to get into fading Joe Mixon. Okay. I look at things, I analyze things, and I see a lot of love for Joe Mixon. A lot of love for Joe Mixon, right? And again, I'm not a huge Joe Mixon guy. I told you guys before, I dive deep into the stats, and I do more than just, oh, he had 100 yards this game. Listen, you really have to dive in to the Joe Mixon lines, okay? Now, I know he's bumping up the charts. There's no Gio Bernard this year. Joe Mixon's going to be the guy. I don't, it's not going to be Perrine. He's not going to do anything for the backup spot. It's just all going to be Joe. There's a lot of things you need to take in perspective with Joe Mixon. Number one, you have to look at the team. Okay, they're coming from Joe Burrow coming back from a major surgery, first time ever in his career, tears his ACL, really bad surgery for a quarterback. And I hate to say that sometimes you have to look at past history when it comes to how players react coming back from injury. And specifically, I look at a guy like Carson Palmer, who did play for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, when he first came back from his first ACL, he looked bad. He looked scared. He looked very hesitant. He didn't want to get hit. Is that going to be Joe Burrow? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's something you got to take in perspective. Okay, something you have to take in perspective. So until Joe Burrow can prove that he's elite back to, or I should say, prove he's back to that elite form that he was starting to show, they're going to stack the box, and they're going to stack the box against Joe Mixon. Okay, now, offensive line, did they get any better? No. They did not get any better. Unless these guys develop, I'm telling you now, they're still going to be bad. Zach Taylor, are you confident in Zach Taylor as a play caller, as a head coach of this football team? It lays a lot to be desired on the running back position, depending on how they're going to perform. They go out, and what do? They draft Jamar Chase. They have a three-headed monster out there with T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase. They have it out there. This is going to be a pass-first system. And then I have to look at what Joe Mixon has been able to do for the first 4 years of his career. 2017, 3.5 yards per carry. 2018, he finally 4.9 gets above that 4.5 threshold. But then the last 2 years, 4.1 and 3.6. Let that sink in for a little bit. 4.1, 3.6. And the reason why I want you guys to let that sink in is because I want you guys to look at who they have around, or who we have around Joe Mixon in these drafts that people are drafting below. And this is what I don't understand, okay? This is where I'm going to get into the talk, where I want you guys to watch this on replay. I want you guys to get up in the chat room and explain to me what you're thinking when it comes to Joe Mixon, because I'm looking at Joe Mixon, okay? And he's being drafted like 6th overall. And from a running back position. That's way too high for me for Joe Mixon. Okay? Listen, this is what we need to look at. And this is going to segue right into our not to reach for RB1 discussion. Okay? So, if you look at Austin Eckler, who's a guy that's being drafted after Joe Mixon in the consensus of NFL fantasy football drafts, just look at his yards per carry. That's what I want you to look at. 4.6 in 2020, 4.2 in 2019. 10 games for Austin Eckler last year, over 16.5 fantasy points per game. 19.6 points per game was his threshold in 2019. He hit that in 12 games. Think about that. Then we're going to go look at Adam Jones, or I just said Adam Jones. I'm thinking about Devontae Adams, swinging them together, right? Then we're going to look at Aaron Jones. I know there's a lot of talk with and we're going to get into that. The retirement rumors with Aaron Rodgers, the contract break-offs with Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones is signed. Aaron Jones is the guy. There is no more Jamal Williams out there, okay? Do they like Dillon? Yes, A.J. Dillon they like, but is he going to, tie in and take some of those carries from Aaron Jones? They give him a spell, but Aaron Jones is used all over the field. But if you look at his numbers, yards per carry, last year was elite. 5.5 yards per carry, okay? 18.5 points per game. The year before, in 2019, 4.6 yards per carry, above the 4.5 point threshold, okay, and 19.1 yards per carry. The reason why I want you to look at those two guys respectively is because they're the guys that are getting drafted after Joe Mixon, who last year averaged a paltry 13.5 points per game in fantasy. And the year before averaged a terrible 11.9 points per game in fantasy. And the year before averaged 14.3 fantasy points per game. So explain to me, please, who and why you're drafting Joe Mixon higher than Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler and that type of running back. For me, Joe Mixon falls out of the top 10. And I'm not ashamed to say it. And I'd love to hear everybody's opinion on that as you watch that back. He falls out of the top 10 for me. Okay, because of those numbers. Look inside the numbers. You can't feed on projections. You can't feed on what he could do. You have to look at what he's done. This isn't a 1-year sample size, right? This is a 3-year sample of consistent data that is right in front of your eyes. Consistent data is right there. So all I'm saying is you need to look at those numbers and figure out, are you willing to say that they're going to change? Are you willing, when you have consistent performers that have shown you the ability to go year to year, game to game, and give you consistency? I am not ready to do it, and I hope you aren't too. So all I'm saying is be very careful. Again, I hope I opened your eyes up a little bit to the Nick Chubb talk and the Joe Mixon talk. Two guys that I know people will say that I'm crazy, that I'm nuts. Why am I fading Joe Mixon? Why am I not sold on Nick Chubb? I just gave you the stats. I just broke it down. Please check it out. Understand and let me know if you feel the same way, because I'm very curious after I break that down if you have the same feelings of those two guys as you did before you watched the Fantasy Firebox. Now, the other part of the running back situation I want to talk about is why you shouldn't be reaching for an RB1. Okay, do not reach for an RB1. And the reason why I say that is I think we all understand the perspective that the top 3 in some order is Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry. Okay, we'll just say the top 4. I think I had the consensus on those 4 guys somewhere in that realm, in that order. Who's number 1? I still think, me personally, I like Dalvin Cook. I think he's number 1, my opinion. I think Kamara gets bumped up to number 2, okay, because of the Michael Thomas talk. And I think that C-Mac gets a hit on some of his touches just a little bit, okay, drops down. And I think after that, we could talk about Derrick Henry. But after that, I don't think there's a need to rush. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, here's some hardcore numbers, okay? This is hardcore numbers, and this is what I want you to look at. Last year, just from last year, we're looking at 2020 because we want the most up-to-date, consistent data that we can find, okay? So we're looking at 2020, and we're going to look at RBs 4 to 15, okay? This is where they finished in 2020. Running backs number 4 to 15, 264 points at the high to the low of 194. That is from number 4 to number 15. After your top 3, number 4 to 15, 264 to 194. Now, what I want you to look at is the wide receiver position for a second, because in PPR leagues, I'm a huge wide receiver proponent. I love the wide receiver position. That's why I like Calvin Ridley so much as my top guy. I think there's tremendous point value in the wide receiver position. What I want you to look at is after the top 3 in wide receivers, number 4 to 15. Guess what that point total is? At the high, 291. At the low, 235. That's almost 50 points higher from number 15 wide receiver to running back. 235 to 194. Why are we reaching for a running back? Why? And I'll tell you why people are going to tell me. And here's the argument. People are going to tell me, Jigsaw, I'm reaching for the running back. You want to know why? Because specifically, I know there's not that many. False. I'm going to tell you why. Let's look at 2020 again. Okay, I broke this down for you because I wanted to come back and battle back against the people to say there's not enough. Yes, there is. And I'll tell you why. Last year, Jonathan Taylor, ADP in the preseason of 19. Guess where he finishes? Number 6. David Montgomery, ADP in 2020 in the preseason of 29, finishes at number 4. Not enough for you? How about Kareem Hunt, ADP of 27, finishes at number 10. And James Robinson, that wasn't even thought of, finishes at number 7. All I'm telling you is you can get running backs after those top 4 in the second and third round that could still be RB1s. And I think that's what you need to look at. You need to stop drafting per position. You need to go best overall value. And value is in the wide receiver position. You're still going to be able to get guys like Antonio Gibson, like David Montgomery, like DeAndre Swift, like Najee Harris, right? Myles Gaskin. Okay, these guys are still going to be there. And the reason why I say, listen, are you better off? People will say, oh, well, I'd rather draft a guy like, I'd rather reach, and I'm going to go get Austin Eckler, and I'm going to get, at number 7, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to look at the receiver position, and then my wide receiver 1, I'm going to look at guys, again, now these are just projections, but I'm going to get a guy like Cooper Kupp. No, that's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for me, because I want a guy like a Calvin Ridley. I want a guy like a D-Hop, a Stephon Diggs, a Justin Jefferson, an A.J. Brown. That's who I want. I don't want my wide receiver 1 as DJ Moore. I don't want my wide receiver 1 as Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett. That's not who I want. You're much better off taking one of those top 15 wide receivers into the top 3 from 4 to 15 than reaching for a 4 to 15 running back. That's my theory. That's the Jigsaw theory. And I'll do it every time. We did a quick mock the other day on the Gambler. Me, Brace, Tansy. And we went a quick snake draft. Boom, boom, boom. Who do you pick? And going with my theory, I still wound up with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor as my running backs, and still wound up with Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 1. If you go the other way, guess what? That's not going to happen because you're going to reach. You're going to reach. If I would have took Jonathan Taylor first, and I took Ridley before Jonathan Taylor. If I would have took Jonathan Taylor first, yeah, you got 2-star running backs. But now my number 1 receiver is Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster. Are you kidding? No, it's not what I want. So I think you really have to look and break these numbers down. That's one of the most important things I think you need to do. And I don't think people do this enough. Now, let's end today on a pretty interesting note, because I love these conversations. So shout out to my boy Shawn Michaels. My boy Adam is my barber. Shawn Michaels, the owner. Adam the barber hooks up the quick fade. We get in a conversation yesterday. Got the text message to prove it. I love it. We get into a tight end fantasy discussion. Mark Andrews or Tyler Higbee. I love this talk. I love breaking this down. So I put some money down that Tyler Higbee will have more catches than Mark Andrews this year. Now, everybody, I'm nuts, crazy, right? But again, the people that say you're crazy, do they legitimately break down the numbers, or they're just looking at what their eye test shows them and not goes deep inside fantasy analytics? Last year, Mark Andrews, who was supposed to be top dog, right? Unbelievable, top dog. Lows in everything. Lows in receptions, lows in yards. Average yards per catch, terrible at 12.1. Did nothing last year. Nothing based on where he was drafted. 88 targets, 58 catches. That's what Mark Andrews did. Not the kind of year that a lot of people thought he was going to have. When you look at his numbers respectively, yes, he did get the targets, but again, only one game last year, actually 2 games last year, where he was above 5 catches, and they were just 6 and 7. Very, very low ball numbers. So not something you want to look at. And on top of that, only 5 games last year in double digits. That's not something I want for my tight end. Now again, tight ends I'm not huge on, but when we're talking about ranking them on a tight end dominant league, you have to be very careful on who you select. So just put in your mind right now, 88, 58, 701. 88, 58, 701. Now, where did Tyler Higbee end up? Okay. Tyler Higbee, 60 targets, 28 targets less. 28 targets less. 44 catches, 521. Okay. So he's about 14 catches less than Mark Andrews and 28 targets less than Mark Andrews. And he only played half the time because he had Gerald Everett on the field. Now there is no Gerald Everett. Now he is a tight end one of a system that, even though they lose Cam Akers, still is going to be run by Matt Stafford, a much better quarterback than Jared Goff. Still has Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Deshaun Jackson to look at. Tyler Higbee is going to go off this year. Is he going to be a top 3? No. Is he going to be top 4? No. But I really think he could be top 5. I think he can hit that number 5 spot. I really do, behind Kyle Pitts. Just my opinion. Okay, based on these numbers, you're going to give him a full run this year. You're going to give him a full target share. You're going to give him a full playbook to be on the field. Okay, a 70 to 80% snap potential that he has not had over the last 3 years. He's getting it this year. That's why I'm telling you right now, if you look at the year before, he had more targets than Mark Andrews had in that year with 89. He's outperformed Mark Andrews in 1 year in 2019, and in 2020, outperformed him projected based upon what they would have done if he had the lion's share of the snaps. So that's my point. You have to look inside the numbers. You have to dive deep. You have to look at the system. So yes, I bet Tyler Higbee would have more catches than Mark Andrews. And I continue to say, I think Tyler Higbee will have more catches than Mark Andrews. And I will draft Tyler Higbee above Mark Andrews for that specific reason. So again, let's review. Biggest thing we learned today is look inside the numbers. Take a deep dive into the analytics of fantasy football. Okay? I'm not an article guy. I'm not. I like to talk. I do. It's my thing. I'm Italian. Okay. I love to talk sports. I love to talk fantasy. You know, when I put thoughts to paper, they don't always come out the right way. So I like to talk. I like to converse. And I like to write messages, whether it be on Discord or whether it be on Twitter, whether it be in the YouTube live chat. Hit it up. I will answer. Would love to have a conversation. Let me know. Do you agree with me fading Joe Mixon? Do you agree with my analysis on the Cleveland Browns? Do you agree that you shouldn't reach for an RB1 after those top 4? Do you agree that you would take a wide receiver between 4 to 15 instead of a running back? Do you agree that Tyler Higbee will outperform Mark Andrews, or do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm nuts? And again, no hot takes here. Okay? There's no hot takes here. I'm going to be honest with you. What I do is I'm giving you why I think it. I'm not just saying, hey, Tyler Higbee, going to be the man. No, I just gave you some stats. Now, if those stats don't work, it is what it is, but I like to dive deep into it. So again, you only get this here on the Fantasy Firebox, exclusively on Win Daily. Now, Saturday and Sundays, 9 a.m., 9:30, depending on what time Jigsaw likes to get up, okay? But usually, again, let's run it down. On Saturdays is usually a baseball dominant show to get you ready for that 7 p.m. slate for DFS. And then Sunday, we go right into the NFL realm. Okay, now going forward, it's going to be a lot more NFL talk. We're going to have pop-up shows during the week on Win Daily. Okay, you're going to see the Fantasy Firebox maybe on a Wednesday, maybe on a Thursday, talking about a specific player, a specific move, an injury, you know, a reshuffling of the projection table, so to speak, right? But again, tons of information at Win Daily Sports. Every social format possible, go follow it. Go follow the YouTube page, hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell, get in our Discord chats, get on the website, look at the great articles. And again, just get with me on Twitter. Let's have a conversation, whether I put some votes out there, whether I put some thoughts out there. I love talking fantasy. You hear it. This is not made up, man. This is my energy level. It's crazy. I won't have a voice after I do these shows, but it's like it's just like what I do. It's just like what I do. But again, as always, I love everybody's interaction. These are Sunday morning shows. Right now, a lot of people watch the Olympics. A lot of people at church. I'm a Catholic man as well, so I do praise Almighty Lord above. I go to mass myself, so I praise those people that are doing that right now. Maybe you're at your son's or your daughter's softball softball, baseball game, whatever it is, watch it on replay. Check it out later. Let me know what you think. As always, I guarantee you this week there will be a pop-up Win Daily show, Fantasy Firebox. Also, don't forget to check out Plus Money Action with me, Nick, and Mark on the Sharp app. You can catch us breaking down a specific game. We go about 15, 20, break down the matchups. I'm sure this week we'll probably do one of those. Heat Ratio Live. Don't forget to follow me at Heat Ratio Sports and all the great personalities we have there. Not from a betting perspective per se, except for we do have a golf show, betting on golf, which is tremendous. 2 of them. My man Chris Exusion, Chris Ebom, and Mark Drumheller. Fantastic job. Separate shows. Okay, Golden Hour Bets. Off the tee, specific shows if you like golf, and the local level. If you're a Philadelphia sports local level, we talk Philadelphia Sports Heat Ratio Live, and we have different guests every single week. So we get into it, as always, but fantasy is where I live. Fantasy is my lane, and you can catch me every single day on Fox Sports The Gambler at 3:50 with a little vignette, a little talk about a player, a system, an analytic, something that's on Jigsaw's mind. You just never know. But like I like to always say, as always, it's Sunday. Go enjoy your day, enjoy your family time, make some money, put some good bets in, get some fantasy talk going, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you here next time.